Good afternoon. Are we audible? Thank you so much for coming, and it's a great honor to introduce Preeta Reddy. Preeta, this is the Thai family's Stree Shakti group.
Hi, nice meeting all of you.
And for people who need an introduction to Preeta, she's heading Apollo. She's the one who will bring healthcare and global healthcare to India and make our lives better. It's a great opportunity for us to have her amidst us today. And while we were speaking in the morning, one of the things that I have requested her to talk is about the focus of health that we as women completely lack and completely oversee while we do our daily duties as wife, mother, daughter, corporate, whatever we play. Thank you so much for coming, guys. Thank you for making this a huge success. I'm Farzana Haq. I'm a part of the core group for Stree Shakti, and it's an absolute honor to have Preeta with us today. I wanted this to be more interactive with all of you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Preeta a couple of questions. And then we will have you all ask her her journey, her learnings as an entrepreneur, how she has inherited something so phenomenal from her father and bringing her own stamp of recognition and her own stamp of what healthcare in India is going to be. Is that okay, Preeta?
That's fine.
So tell us about how you started and when did you realize that this was your calling rather than something you had to do because your dad was doing it?
Gosh, that takes me a long time ago, but thanks for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be amongst all of you. Many people don't realize, but it's actually the Stree Shakti in India which is making a difference. So God bless all of you for really being what you are and who you are. Farzana asked me about myself. Somehow, an Indian girl or an Indian woman, her whole story starts with being her father's daughter. And then it's like, the husband's wife. And then if you have sons, it's the son's mother. And our group seems to be the sandwich generation because we were the ones who listened to everything our parents said. And we are the ones who are listening to everything our children say. So when I said it the other day, somebody just cracked up with laughter, but it's true. But having said that, I think, when she asked me about my calling, even when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a doctor. We lived in a large, very traditional household, and poor servants, if anybody even had a little cut on his finger, he had to come to me, to get a little Band-Aid on his finger. So it was from the time I was a child, I didn't know better. But then again, I came from a very traditional Andhra family. So my father, when I said, I want to do medicine and I want to be a doctor, he said, you cannot be a doctor, you just have to get married. There was no option. So at 19, I was married into, again, a very, very traditional Andhra family. And at that time, I don't think my father was thinking of, doing anything like what he's done today. So a lot of it seems to be destiny or fate. And it all started because he lost a young man who was 35 with 2 children. He couldn't go to the US in time for cardiac surgery. And that kind of bothered all of us because even as children, if we had holidays, we would go to his clinic to help him with his patients. We were like free labor all the time. So we were just, our whole lives were centered around patient care. So anyway, this happened and it really bothered him so much. So that's how the whole Apollo dream even started. And at that time, the banks were not financing, hospitals. So we had to change the legislation. He spent like days and days in Delhi, just to get the legislation in favor of banks funding hospitals. And then we had to go public because we really couldn't afford a hospital. So as children, we sat and wrote out, his speeches, worked on what he would present to investors. So we started like very young, and honestly speaking, we don't know anything better than hospitals. It's so strange because, we're 4 sisters, and frankly, we're equals. I just happen to be the eldest, so I'm, first among equals. Even when we sit and talk, we only talk about the hospital. We only talk about healthcare. And my mother says, don't you girls know anything better? Can't you talk about clothes or whatever? So now we talk about the children. But beyond that, there's really nothing else in our conversation. So we did this, and I think if Dr. Reddy, my father, had a son or two sons, I wouldn't be sitting in front of all of you. Because it would have been the men who really did it. And I have to be honest and admit that. You know, we do come from traditional backgrounds, but there were no boys. And the father's daughters listened to the father. So I think a lot of it has been because we never argued with him. You know, we said, this is my dad's vision, we'll do it. And in a way, it's been very successful up to, you know, for us to have just followed his vision when he needed us. But, you know, as we grew along, the passion to do healthcare, to do more, to grow, to do it better, to get the best practices globally. And I think one of the things which I'm so excited about is the fact that we could bring quality into our system. Before we really started doing too much on it, there was no quality certification at all for hospitals. So then we all sat together and, you know, I sat with my team and I said, how do we put some benchmark for quality? So at that time, it was ISO. So we were the first hospitals to do ISO. And today, there are about 2,000 healthcare institutions doing ISO. And then it was like, okay, that's fine, but it's not the greatest. So what was the highest globally? So it was the JCI of the USA. When I first went to the JCI office, they looked at me and they said, oh, but you're from India. You can't do JCI in your country. And I was so appalled that they said something about India. I said, no, we can really do it. But I had to make 4 visits to Chicago before they even took us seriously. And today we have about 8 hospitals. Other hospitals are doing JCI, and that's become the gold standard in India, which is superb. And JCI now has opened an office in New Delhi, you know, so it's really moved over the past 15 years. And I mean, I feel happy we could do it for the country, but the best part is then the government of India called us, the Apollo team, and said, now you tell us, because JCI is very expensive, not everyone can do it, give us quality standards for Indian hospitals. So what is called the NABH has evolved. And you know, we set down the specs for them. So today there are about 200 hospitals in India with the NABH certification. And now health insurance is saying that, you know, unless you have the certification, we won't, you know, allow our patients to come there. So what has happened is that, you know, in a very, without being aggressive, without really, you know, causing a lot of attention, we've quietly managed to raise the bar, raise the standards for quality healthcare being given. We've been able to set norms, set standards, and put a monitoring system in place. And I think that has probably been the single largest contribution of the private sector to healthcare in India, that we've actually managed to raise the bar.
Absolutely, Preeta. In fact, very inspiring to hear that. I was in London last week, and I was meeting a group of private equity, you know, top boys. And they said, you know, Farzana, the next thing in India, the big thing we're looking is healthcare. Today, I want to send my mom to India for healthcare rather than the US. So I think it's a huge kudos to what Apollo and what all of them have put. They have put us on a, you know, on the world map. The best doctors across the globe are wanting to come back to India today. And I know, and thanks to, you know, what Apollo and the other institutes are doing, they are bringing, as Preeta said, serious quality. They're bringing in patient care, which, you know, a couple of years back, if you went into any hospital, the doctor was the king, and as a patient, you were really not knowing who to ask. These are amazing changes in the institutions. So these are building institutions, Preeta, which will make India the superpower, you know, and I say it with great pride and humility, whether it was the technology wave or what we have done. We have moved a social class in India, right? Today, if I see some people who are going on projects and I see their passport and I see father's occupation, you know, beetle shop owner, and this guy is going to lead a project out of Chicago, it's a matter of great pride. I don't know, he educates his daughters. And I was telling somebody yesterday about that, you know, I'm talking to Preeta today, and what is that I should bring out as a question? And this I was asking a guy. And I'll tell you later after this who I was asking. And he said, how can my daughters be like her? How can I, and this is a father talking, and he has no daughters, he has 4 sons. So if I had a daughter, what skill or what personality should she be to be able to take, because this is the tipping point of India today, guys, of where we would stand as a nation. Preetha's story, where people would laugh saying, really, India can do this? So I started my career in 99 and I was talking to some guys and they were like, oh, y'all cost labor arbitrage. This is what India does, cheap labor. To right now where we are going in advising companies. So if you hear a story, the fact that fate played a big part in getting you where you are, but what about you do you think is your father, besides you're the firstborn and the fact that you were born there, what is the personality skills that you have, that your dad sees in you to be forefronting the entire healthcare revolution in India? And don't be modest. I really want 3 skill sets
No,
which are different.
I must say this, my father is a very inspiring leader.
It is,
So I
yes.
think he brings out the best in everyone. I see myself as a people person because, to me, the best way to manage an institution is really being there. So, we learned literally from the basement of the hospital, wherever the housekeeping or the F&B is, it's good to know whatever you're doing inside out. And somehow when it's a very people-related organization, when you're in the service industry, when your business is actually, we are in the business of caring. We should never forget the caring factor of what we do. Profits will come. And why do we need profits? Because, frankly, everyone's invested in the hospital. We have shareholders, we have doctors who've invested, we've got the banks, we've got private equity. So we are answerable to them. We are answerable to the board. But more than anything else, we're answerable to the people who come to us. And, we're answerable to that caring in our business. And I think that's what's really made me what I am, because my priorities have changed immensely after working there. It's a simple example on management, what, I've kind of done for myself is in any organization, even if you have 5 people, you have 5,000 people or 50,000 people. We today deal with 100,000 people. It's just kind of grown. They will walk into your office and they're the chronic whiners. You can't help it. They will come, our senior medical staff will come, whoever, and say, this is not right, this person said this went wrong, blah, 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 blah. You can listen to him for 5 minutes. I would listen for 10 minutes, pick up the phone, and if I can straighten it out, which is superb. But when they are leaving, I say, excuse me, there's this boy in, general ward, bed number 42. Could you just see him before you leave? The message is very clear. His problem is much bigger than yours. People have learned and understood. It's really changed the kind of people who are only because they know that when they come into Apollo or any healthcare system, their wants are much more than any one of us. They come with pain, they come with problems, they come with money, with no money. They have cancer, it's a terminal disease. It's really a very hard environment to work in. So it's the most unglamorous, business to be in, frankly. But it's a business which you really have to commit to 24/7. And I tell everybody that. I said, we're not a 9-to-5 organization. If you think you're going to be working in some kind of comfort zone, don't come to us. Don't come and look for a job here because you have to commit 24/7. My phone is on all the time. My husband doesn't mind it. My children don't mind it. And we know that that's really, so I think that commitment to what you have to deliver, that commitment to caring is really what has made me what I am. It's made me a happy individual because I really love my work. I love Monday morning because, I go to work earlier on a Monday than I would. And we go to work on Sundays. And I have to tell you this, that, normally women, we sit at home and I think, okay, let me cook lunch for the kids. And, we put oil in our hair and we want to do all these little girly things. And I will call my dad 9:30, 10, and I know he's at work. And I say, hi, Dad, what's going on? He will not say anything. And he'll say, you think people don't get sick on a Sunday? That's the only thing he would say. You think people don't get ill on a Sunday? And in 10 minutes, we've, showered, ready, and at work on a Sunday. So Sunday is really, catching up, strategic planning for the future, problem solving. But all of us go to work on a Sunday. And you know, there's this, if you have a line between your work life and your home life, you know, everybody loves talking about work life, home life balance. I'm sure all of you have heard it. Let me tell you that the moment you think of a balance, the moment you draw a line between work life and home life, you're not happy people. You know, it has to be seamless. You have, and there's a philosophy behind giving. A woman can give 100% every time. You know, you don't have to compartmentalize. You know, I love my husband the most, then I love my children, or I love my children the most, and then I love my husband, then my parents. It doesn't work that way. You can love equally every time. And, you know, we need to understand that. And that's one of the greatest philosophy lessons I've ever learned, that you can love your work, you can love your husband, you can love your children, you can love your parents, you can love your friends, you can, you know, you can do it. And the more you give, the more you get. And I think I've really, really learned that and learned to appreciate that as I've gone along in my work. So that really is my story.
You know, I will add to something there, Preeta. I'm also a great believer of that. I don't believe that your life is separate, your work is separate, and there is a balance. There is no balance. You will have to live with that. You know, you have to live with the fact that there is one life, and you will get calls on Sunday. I think the kind of personal commitment that is required to reach where and head what Preeta is doing today supersedes anything. It has to be passion. It has to come from within. You have to be that person. You cannot fake it. If it was not Preeta's personality and her ability to, you know, manage a large and sometimes irate workforce, even if she was the oldest, I don't think Dr. Reddy would have said do it, because, you know, I think that skill and I'm interacting with her and that's what I feel. How do you handle a tough situation? See, you have inherited something, right? There's legacy of being Dr. Reddy's daughter and being the next in line. But there is, how do you bring Preeta Reddy in that role? How do they see Preeta Reddy as an MD and who will also take tough calls? Give us an example.
Well, I must say there's a hand of God in everything. And sometimes in a tough situation, and this may be a complete paradox to what you're used to hearing, you might have to think with your heart. You might have to be intuitive. You know, in management, surprisingly, I never went to business school. You know, whatever I learned by really, literally walking the wards and walking behind my father. It was soon after I started working. And it's very instinctive, some of the things which we end up doing. We had a strike in the hospital. You know, some politician, whatever, instigated a strike. And everybody sat in the basement and we didn't know what to do because it was so new to our culture. Like I was getting a bit tearful, but what bothered me most, you know, they were all young boys, you know, in a hospital, the ward staff and all. In a new hospital, they're very young. And it was, you know, it was like 2:30 in the afternoon, and they were just sitting there, and there was no impasse and God knows what. But I guess because I was a mom, or I don't know what happened, but I opened the kitchens out. And I said, these boys must be hungry. There's no point starving them on top of fighting with him. So we just opened the kitchens out and fed all of them. You won't believe it. They took away those stupid black bands they were wearing. They just left it wherever they ate and they just went back to work. Now, you know, I have no explanation for it. I have no man. So I think a lot of, we actually have a power, you know, you're saying Stree Shakti, blah, blah, blah. We're great managers. And sometimes we don't seem to, you know, we think, we hold back, we wonder, oh my gosh, can I open my mouth? Can I say this? Can I do this? I'm a daughter-in-law, I'm a daughter, whatever. But, you know, don't forget to listen to that inner voice. You know, do some things intuitively. You may be just right all the time. And this lesson has taught me so many things in the future that, you know, sometimes even in a boardroom, sometimes with investors, you know, if you do a shareholders agreement with lawyers from the USA and lawyers from Bombay, It's the toughest thing ever. I hope nobody's sitting here, but I'm telling you, it's really, really hard. But at the end of it, if you want this partnership to happen, if you know it's good for the company, not for you, not for your ego, otherwise it's good to sign a deal, you know, it's fantastic. All the newspapers will write about you, they'll say the greatest. But if you think it's good for the company, and if you think you're going to go forward with it, you should go for it. So I think a lot of it is if you put the company before yourself, you know, if it's always the good of whatever you're doing before yourself. So this ego needs to come second. You know, don't look at short-term goals. Don't look at, oh my God, I will get my place in the sun. You'll get it anyway. But just do what is right, you know. And I think that is very, very important to be successful in anything we're doing. You might have to argue, you might have to put your foot down. Don't hesitate to do it because you're not doing it for yourself. And I think that's where we gain respect among our peers that, you know, if she says something, she's not doing it for herself. She's doing it because, you know, Apollo needs it, the organization needs it. And a lot of times when you have to argue with clinicians and doctors, it's because the patient needs it. It's not because the bottom line needs it, you know, and then it always works.